Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to once again be joined by Mark Mancina. Over the course of his long career, Mark has written the music for films such as Speed, Bad Boys, Assassins, Twister, Mole Flanders, Shooter, Training Day, Disney's Tarzan, Brother Bear, The Haunted Mansion, August Rush, Planes, Moana, and many more. In 2019, the musical based on the film August Rush premiered at the Paramount Theater in Aurora, Illinois, a project which we will also discuss on this podcast episode. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you. Nice to talk with you again.
It's great to have you back on my show. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to me today.
Sure.
And Mark, before your career was in full swing, so to speak, you had started working with Hans Zimmer way back in 1990, also on Days of Thunder. And if I'm not mistaken, you had also produced some of the songs for the album. And Mark, were you also involved with the score back then, if I may ask?
No, I wasn't involved in the score. I was working with Trevor Horn with Seal, and I think that then Trevor Horn, I think this is the way it worked. I'm not sure if I've got the order correct, but I think that Trevor Horn was brought in to produce a song by made from the score theme with Billy Idol. Originally Billy Idol, and then it was David Coverdale who I think ended up singing it. And I was just brought in to play keyboards, play guitar, work with Trevor Horn, help arrange the song. And that was kind of my main work on Days of Thunder.
And subsequently, you also started to contribute to the Marlboro campaign, the Follow Your Dreams. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do now. Yeah, we did that in Germany, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we what happened was they asked me if I could come up with a fresh look at the famous Elmer Bernstein piece, and I did. I kind of came up with something that they really liked, and I was kind of like a suite. And then I wrote some other incidental music along with the suite, and then we went to Munich and recorded it, and I got to go to the Oktoberfest. That was amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really, that was it's kind of a whirlwind. It's a long time ago, but that's where that was done.
And you also performed the song version of one of Hans's themes. That was pretty, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I'm sure many people don't know about this, but it was actually a great performance on your end, and the song is really good. I mean, really good.
That was a long time ago. I think we were trying to find a singer. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do, and I just said, I'll just sing it, And so Jay put up a mic, and we just did it,
Jay Rifkin, right?
Yes, Jay Rifkin, yeah.
Right, indeed, a long time ago. One of the projects which I've always greatly enjoyed, I don't know if you have a great memory of this one, Millennium, Tribal Wisdom and the Modern World.
It was given to me by Zimmer. It was a series, and I think he wrote one theme, and then I wrote a bunch of themes, and then I got John Van Tongeren involved in it because there were so many episodes. It was all credited to Hans, but we all wrote it, so it was just one of those things where it was, it was a job, and it was something to pay the bills. But interestingly, some of those themes led to big projects, and they were done in my bedroom in Huntington Beach, which is a little beachside town, where I also did the Lion King songs there. So it's really, I had this little tiny bedroom studio, and I did a lot of stuff out of that place.
The Lion King happened in 1994, and you produced the songs, as you just mentioned, and you also worked hard on the Rhythm of the Pride Lands album. Your career kind of took off after that. I mean, you also did Bad Boys in 1995, and you had done Speed prior to that. And the last time we spoke, we also talked about your relationship with Jan de Bont. and how he gave you your big break, so to speak. So we had already talked about that. And I still watch Speed, and I'm still pretty fond of it, I must say. And the score is still a crowd pleaser too. I don't know if you still get some feedback from fans about this score.
Yeah, in fact, we were planning on doing it this year. Of course, it's not going to happen, but I think it's going to be the following May. We're going to do a live concert here in Monterey, and we're going to do parts of Speed and parts of some of the scores live, because we haven't really done that before. So, and yeah, that opening of Speed, the fact back then, which was great for a composer, was that is almost like an overture at the beginning of the movie. They would run the credits at the beginning of the film, so that you would write an overture for the film. And I think that really, really worked in Speed, because the music at the beginning of the film really sets the stage for the whole story. So I thought that was cool.
It absolutely was. And unfortunately, Jan de Bont's directing career didn't really turn out, I think, the way that he wanted it to, which is unfortunate, because I think he had great talent as a director. And unfortunately, after, I think it was Lara Croft Tomb Raider, I think that was the end of his directing career, if I'm not mistaken. So
we were in an era where a director like Jan, who was a cinematographer, he was an amazing cinematographer.
Yes.
And it cost a lot of money and to make those movies. And he made Speed for relatively cheap, relatively at that time. And then when he made Twister, it cost a fortune. And by the time he made Speed 2, he was really spending money. And I think that the studios just felt that he was too expensive, and that his early projects were extremely successful. But, Speed 2 and Lara Croft, those weren't very successful films. And I think that they just couldn't keep hiring him at the rates that he was used to making.
Okay.
So it was a combination of things. I wish his career would have kept going, because he's really talented. I mean, Speed is one of the coolest movies still to this day. So
yes.
And I've read recently where they're going to do a remake of Twister, so that'll be interesting.
Oh yes, I came across that piece of information. Well,
yeah.
I don't know what if that's good news or bad news. I mean, remakes are a dime a dozen anyway, and remakes, spin-offs. I greatly enjoyed Twister, even though some people said it was kind of, silly and over the top and just cheesy and whatever. But I still believe it's a great piece of 90s filmmaking, action, suspense filmmaking. That's at least that's what I believe.
Oh, and it made a fortune too. So
it was very successful. And another film which was very successful, which we did talk about last time, was Bad Boys. I seem to recall you telling me it wasn't the best and most fun experience with this team of filmmakers. Yes. And
to say the least, yeah.
And I don't mean to get into Bad Boys much, because we did cover it, but may I ask how you still made it possible to come up with this really, really amazing score, despite having to deal with difficult personalities and strong personalities such as Don Simpson, Michael Bay, and Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yeah. I was younger, for one thing, and I was willing to go through that grind of what they ground me through. It didn't need to be that way, but that's the way they worked at that time, and I don't know how they work now, because I haven't worked with them. I haven't worked with Jerry for quite a while, but I have to say that it did turn out really great. It would have been great if they wouldn't have ground me down either. I mean, I was writing great stuff. They wouldn't sign off on anything. So whatever they heard, they go, nah, and then it'd be the same thing. But I, recently the Bad Boys for Life movie that did really, really well before the whole COVID thing hit.
Yes.
I was really pleased that composer that did that wrote to me and said, I used your themes for the movie. So, it's basically based on the first Bad Boys, the themes and everything, and it did really, really well. So I'm hoping that those themes live on with the Bad Boys franchise. If they do another one, I'm hoping that those themes are kind of married to those figures. That makes me proud.
Absolutely, and rightfully so. And Mark, do you plan on returning to the action genre down the road?
I don't know. I started out, really action was really my calling card, and everybody wanted me to do action movies. And it was weird because at the same time that Speed came out, The Lion King came out around the same time, and so I was known as this ethnic, combining ethnic style with singing and with all this stuff. So sort of the Tarzan and the Moana world, and then but I was also known for Speed and Bad Boys, which was action genres. So my career kind of split, and the problem for me was that action movies go for the same thing all the time. They go for the same score. I mean, I'm listening to some of the scores nowadays. They sound the same as they did back then to me, to my ear. Sonically, they might be better, but it's the same approach. It's the same idea. It's loops. It's percussion. It's you know all this stuff with some kind of orchestral thing in the background of it. And I don't know. I just grew kind of tired of doing that same thing over and over again. Um, my interests are kind of in different areas of film music, I think now.
Yes, I totally get your point. And Mark, if you were to re-examine your career, and in terms of theme variation and continuity, which project stood out the most? Which project was exemplary of that?
I think if it would have been a better film, if it would have been made better, and if it would have been edited better, I think August Rush could have been really, really great. I think musically, it's one of my strongest. I think Speed is one of my strongest. Um, the Disney movies, I think, are all really consistent. I think The Lion King, I did quite a bit of work on that original one. And then I think Tarzan was really, really good. And I think Moana was really, really good. And those are really tough projects. Combining, studying and combining ethnic Polynesian music or African music or West African music to learn those styles and then incorporate them into a film. Working with Phil Collins or Lin Miranda takes you got to wear a lot of hats to do that. There's not a lot of people that can do that. I mean, there are people that can do it, but there's not a lot of people that can do it. And so I've been very fortunate that I've kind of fell into that chair because I enjoyed that. It's very collaborative. It's almost like being at a band at times. I mean, Lynn and I really had a great time working on Moana. And Phil Collins and I had a really great time working on Tarzan and Brother Bear. So it all ended up being, really worthwhile for sure.
Yes. And Brother Bear, I actually rewatched the film. Phil Collins also co-scored the film. At least he does have a credit. How did you split? Yeah. How did you split up the work?
So what we did was Phil really wanted to score the movie. I mean, when I did Tarzan, Phil just would marvel at what I was doing, and he kept telling me, "I want to do what you do. I want to learn how to do what you do." And I'd look at him like, "Are you nuts?" But he really wanted to score the film. So originally they signed him to do the movie. I wasn't signed to do the movie. And I was kind of disappointed because I kind of felt like, man, we had a great team, the two of us. Why aren't we doing this again? But they signed him. And then I think they realized, he's not going to be able to score a film. I mean, he can learn the logistics of it, and he's got great ideas. But when it really comes down to it, working with orchestra and working with that stuff, that's not really what he knows. So they asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, what we could do is Dave Metzger, who did a ton of work on Tarzan, if he sort of helped Phil with, the mock-up of Phil's cues, so that Phil would give us a cue and then Dave would kind of go through it and, put the oboe in the right key or put the, whatever needed to happen, that then Phil could go ahead and write stuff and feel like he was really, contributing and doing stuff and writing some score. And so that was really fun, and I thought that was a really great solution, and it seemed to work really well. But it was funny because I was right after that, I was hired to do the Tarzan musical.
Yes.
And I thought, great. I mean, Phil has seen The Lion King. He told me He Lives in You was his favorite song. We've worked together now for 8 years. He knows I'm a good songwriter. He's a great songwriter. We can work together on the incidental music. This is a perfect combination, right? And the day of flying to Paris to meet together, they told me Phil didn't really want, just wanted to do it on his own. Didn't want me to be involved. And so I was disappointed, but I was relieved, because I had done the Lion King musical, and believe me, it's a big part of your life. So I was kind of relieved when they told me that they couldn't make a deal. And as it turned out, Tarzan wasn't very successful, and I think that I think that sometimes you feel like you can do it all. And I think that I think he would have been better off having done it together. My own feeling.
Yeah.
And I certainly would never say that about his career or his writing or Genesis or any of that kind of stuff. It's just purely just the idea of working on a musical with interstitial music and all that kind of stuff. It takes, I don't know. We were a good combination. It would have been better, I think.
I would like to talk a little bit about album presentation, especially Brother Bear. The album features roughly 45 minutes of music, and the film contains or features much more material, much more. Why would Disney make a decision to cut down the album's length to 45 minutes, which is not an isolated case? And funnily enough, there are editions, and the German edition, for instance, features one additional score cue. They did that for Brother Bear, Tarzan, The Lion King, and Mulan, and so many others, which is interesting. Did you have to fight with them a little in terms of album presentation? Went down?
They kind of here's the deal. So when you do let's say that they would release a song album and a score album. Okay, so they would release songs from the movie, and then they would release the actual score, which they've done that with me before. Here's what they do. Number one, they release the song record first. So everybody buys that. Then after that, they release the score record, and nobody buys that because they're like, well, no, we already have the songs. What is that? What's the score? The other thing is it's very expensive for them to release a score album. There's a lot of licensing fees. There's a lot of union fees. So it's expensive. So unless they really feel like they're going to sell a lot of CDs, or at the time CDs, they don't really want to do it. So what they do is they give you a slot, and they tell me you've got 16 minutes, or take whatever score you want of yours, and we're going to put it on, and you can do it in whatever order you want, whatever. And so that's what we did. And I mean, for me, it's very disappointing to take up the space with Phil's original demos of the songs, and then the actual finished songs that we did together. To me, that's kind of redundant, and I don't know why they do that. But they did it on Moana too. They released everything. They released songs that we wrote that never made it in the movie. I mean, they just put everything on there. So it's just the way they do it. I was talking to Alan Silvestri the other day. He was telling me that when they released Forrest Gump album, they didn't put the feather theme, which is the famous theme from that movie that he wrote. They didn't put that on the record. And he was like, he couldn't believe it. He was just like,
You're kidding.
No. And I think with the success of the movie, they went back and they did more CDs and this and that. But this is just part of the business. It's just the way it works. You work so hard on that score, and you would think they would want to have it out in the public. It's just not a priority somehow.
I know how tricky this can be, also due to the reuse fees and etc. etc. So yeah. I was just curious as to how Disney puts together their albums, and of course Disney is not a poor company, so I think that
no, they're not. But they've been great with me, for the most part, and I've done a lot of stuff with Disney. So my relationship with Tom McDougall and with Chris Montan and John Lasseter and Tom Schumacher and all these guys has been great. I mean, they got to do what they got to do. But they've been great to me, and they've always treated me with respect, and which is more than I can say for a lot of other people in the industry. So I don't have really any negative things to say about that company.
Okay, great. I mean, yeah, I mean, you have written quite a few scores for them: Haunted Mansion, Planes
Yeah,
2, Moana, Brother Bear, Tarzan, and so many others. And John Lasseter had produced Moana in
yeah.
2016, if I remember correctly. And have you been in talks with Disney about a new project, if you are at liberty to disclose that?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I've got um, two projects coming up, but neither one of them, because of the COVID thing, timing is really weird right now. Like when they would normally have things in the funnel just ready to go and just let's go, everything's kind of holding back a little bit, and because they're not sure, how can they record it? Well, how can they do this? When can they post? When can they have post schedule? So the things I'm planning on doing are really exciting, and I would tell you all about them, but I can't really talk about them until they're solidified. But I can say this that John is not with Disney or Pixar anymore. John is starting his own animation company due to some politics in the United States, and I love the guy. I did both Planes movies and Moana with him, and he's hands on. He's there for everything. This is not some guy that produces it and puts his name on it. This is a guy who sits there with you, listens to the themes, works with you, goes to the orchestra sessions, sits in the orchestra with the orchestra. I mean, he's a phenomenal artist. And yeah, I really hope I do something with him in the future. I just don't know, I don't know what he's doing. I think he's doing something with Alan Menken. I'm not sure really, but I got nothing but good things to say about him.
Moana was a very good score. I mean, and a kind of lavish album when compared to some of the other Disney records. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to your new material, and I'm sure it's gonna be great. And I know you, I mean, you have stated in the past that you have kind of become really picky about your projects, also, as you don't want to, let's say, factory the scores out, so to speak.
I hate to sound that snooty, but really, I don't know if you have snooty in Germany. I hate to
We
sound
do, yeah.
pompous. You do, okay. Um, what I mean is that when I get a script, if it really gets me excited, then I want to do it so badly. But a lot of the scripts that I get, I'm right on the fence, going, I don't know, I just don't know. This just feels like, so it's difficult. And I, as I say, I got a script lately that I really got excited about. So that's refreshing. Because the last two projects that I was really involved with, as far as Hollywood or whatever you want to call it goes, would be August Rush the musical in Chicago, and then the Lion King live action film that they did last year.
Yes.
And both of those projects were extremely disappointing for me, and I really wasn't happy with the result from those. So I'm that's why I kind of choose where I take the next step wisely, because I don't want to step in a sand trap. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely get your point. But August Rush, I believe you worked on this project, the musical project, for at least 2 or 3 years,
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken.
I hate to say it, but 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah, and the problem, the music was quite good. I wrote some really good songs, and it needed a lot of development, but the team was wrong, and this is something that on the Lion King musical, somehow, Lebo, me, Julie, Roger and Irene, the writers, um, somehow that got that worked. The personalities and the creative and just somehow that worked. But August Rush was not that. We didn't have the right team, and so they still want to regroup and go at it again. the company that's supporting it, and we'll see. But it has to be the right team. Otherwise, you're getting on a ship with a captain that doesn't really know where he's going, and that can really be frustrating.
Yes, I mean, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, I haven't experienced the musical when it was released. I haven't had the chance to fly to the States to go to the premiere. But I thought it sounded very promising, and I
Yeah,
mean the score, as you mentioned before, is certainly one of your strongest ones, and it was a lovely movie to boot, and it really has the potential to work as a musical. At least that's what I believe.
right. I do too. As I say, the reason that the Lion King musical worked for the most part was Julie Taymor. I
Yes.
mean, the music is great, of course, and Lebo is amazing, and all of the African spirit in it, would never have made it. But she was a visionary, and I think that if August Rush had a visionary, I think that it would be a huge success. But we didn't. So you hope that. You hope that maybe they put that kind of team together. I don't really have the confidence that they will, but they might. You never know.
I realize you are not. You are kind of disappointed, and I checked some of the reviews
Yeah,
of the musical. Some people seem to really like it, but on the other hand, there were quite a few people who were really disappointed, to say the
yeah.
least, with the
I don't.
presentation.
The truth is that John cut the show in half right before it opened. So the show was only an hour long, which, everybody was so disappointed in the audience because they thought the first half was the first half and they thought they were coming back for a second half. There was no announcement made that there was only one act, that nothing. So people were really disappointed, including me. And as I say, I mean, it wasn't the right team. It was a really, we were really in opposite directions of what we thought. He dressed everybody in like tuxedos, and they're supposed to be street musicians, and I mean it was just so unfocused, and it just wasn't thought through. And I think the only reason that anybody liked it at all was I think that the cast did a great job, and I think that the music was good at times, um, and that's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, that's really disappointing, and I wish it could have been more. And but maybe you will have the opportunity to be involved in a large musical production again, or a Broadway musical, and let's just see how it goes. It would,
Sure.
would be great, and I'm also sure many fans would love to spot your name in the credits a little bit more often. I often get kind of feedback. Yeah, I mean, I often get kind of feedback. Where is Mark Mancina? What has he been doing? Has he been doing a major movie or a movie in the past couple of years? And
Yeah.
I knew you were busy with the musical, which is also what you told me last time we spoke. And of course, I'm looking forward to listening to new material, new score cues, which you will hopefully deliver in the future.
Well, what happened is that after doing August Rush and then working on the Lion King movie and then doing He Lives in You, which we did an amazing version of it, and they pulled it out of the movie and they put in a demo version at the end credits that I had nothing to do with. Um, I was just so disappointed in the industry, at that point, that it's just such a money grab sometimes, and you just think, you take a product as great as The Lion King is, and just do a money grab and try to make as much money as you can off of it is really a mistake because it's a something that should be protected. So I just I was disappointed in it. It was fun to work with Hans, and Hans was great, and we had fun. We were recording and everything, but it didn't make any difference because they didn't use it. So um, it was just disappointing. So at that point, um, what I really wanted to do was to study with great classical guitarists because I play classical guitar, and I really wanted to study with some virtuosic teachers and players. And that's what I've been doing. And it's weird that the COVID thing sort of happened because everything stopped anyway. So it was like, well, sitting in your room alone with your guitar is probably the safest possible thing you can do. Nobody's meeting, nobody's getting together and doing things. I had an opportunity to start a movie in January, and I decided not to, and it was a very, very good decision. But I've been studying that, and then, as I say, I've got a couple of scripts that came by and a couple of meetings that went really well, and so I'm looking at doing a couple new projects, and that'll be fantastic. But my classical world is very, very important to me. And so, it's something that I study, and it's something that, because of my success, I can afford to do, and I don't have to worry about having a career as a classical guitarist. So I'm very, very fortunate.
Of course, you are a very experienced composer and very popular. Many people love your work, including myself. And sometimes a composer gets pitched a project which sounds just good on paper. Yet when you're working on the film, you may feel it doesn't deliver. Have you ever had this kind of experience, and how? And yes, how did you solve it? It might also serve as a tip for young aspiring composers.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues is, you see, when you're doing a film score, this is actually something that Alan Silvestri sort of reinforced to me. You're doing a service job. I mean, you're cooking a meal for somebody, and if they don't like it, you can argue till you're blue in the face, but they're hiring you as a service person, not as a genius composer that anything I write is genius and you'll accept whatever I do and it'll be great. There are composers that get away with that. Very few. But it's a service job. So if the director works with you and says, listen, this scene is really not working, and what can we do? How can we make the scene better musically so that it works better? Right? That would make sense, right?
Yes.
Those words have rarely been spoken to me. Normally, what a director says is, the music's not working. You're making the scene not work. So, I have been in a fix-it position before. A really good example was Speed 2. There was never a point where Jan came to me and said, look, this movie is not really working, and it's slow. We got to do something. Can we do something musically to make it happen better, But we never had that conversation. The conversations were always, no, the music's not working. I'd say, well, the scene is, they're getting off the boat for 15 minutes. It's boring. I mean, what can I do? Well, you got to do something because it's not working, So on the other hand, if you've got a John Lasseter, if you've got, the guys that worked on Moana, where they'll listen to you. If you say, listen, if this scene's kind of long, and if it was just a little bit shorter, I could do this or that. If you've got an editor that wants to listen to you, which I did with Disney, then it's a whole different ballgame. Then you're working together to try to make something great. So that's why Moana and Tarzan are great, and Speed 2 is not great. It's because the Disney collaborates. They collaborate. They listen. They don't always say that I'm right. I mean, of course, they'll tell me it's not right, this and that, but they listen. And they try to work together. I think that live action directors, as I said, there's so much money involved. Things are moving fast. There's actor egos. There's all sorts of stuff going on. That directors don't really have that sort of sensitivity to realizing what the music really does or can do. And there are those choice directors that get it, right? There are those people. Alan Silvestri works with those people. They're out there, but boy, they're hard. They're kind of hard to find. I would say for aspiring composers, that's something that you need to learn, is that if you get the gig, it just means that you're working for the director now, and you need to give him his vision, not just your vision. You can impart your vision, but he really is going to have the final say.
Sounds plausible. And of course, I know what you mean with the Speed 2 problem. Of course, if a scene goes on and on, what are you going to do? It always depends on the scene. I'm sure there are certain long-winded scenes which you could enhance editorially or musically, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
Well, it's a funny thing. I mean, I think one of my strongest pieces was Training Day. I love the way the film was done, and I love what we did together. But I don't work with him anymore for whatever bizarre reason. And Antoine, when I did Training Day, he seemed like he was sort of happy with it, but I don't know. It didn't seem like he was that happy with it. He has since told me that the piece in the end credits is his favorite piece of score, and I told him, well, that was a piece that you took out of the movie and you put in the end credits. It was in a great scene, and you took the music out for some reason. So yeah. It's always a strange job, and you just never really know. You never know what the relationship is. It can be very fickle.
Yeah. The last film you did with Antoine Fuqua was Shooter, actually, 2003, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't think he was happy with that. I think the score was really good. I think certain parts were really great, but he didn't really know what he wanted with that film. And when we watched it and screened it, he just looked at me and goes, "I can make a much better movie than that." And that's one of the last things that we did. I mean, he did a pilot that he asked me to do after that, and I did it, and he didn't use the music. He just used temp, and the show wasn't good, and that was kind of the end. I mean, we haven't worked together since. I think he works with Harry Gregson Williams. They seem to have a good relationship, and I know that Harry's right down the street from Antoine. They're really close proximity.
Yes,
which I think Antoine likes that a lot. Because
yes.
I'm near San Francisco, so I'm up in northern part of
Carmel.
Central. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Actually, Harry is scoring Antoine's new movie. It's called Infinite.
Yeah.
And he is scoring it. In between, he had worked with James Horner and on Southpaw, and then James passed away, and then Simon Franklin, I believe fleshed out James Horner's ideas for The Magnificent Seven, and then Antoine went back to Harry for The Equalizer. Yeah.
Right. And listen, good for Harry. Those aren't movies I'm interested in doing. I don't want to do The Equalizer 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever they're going to do, because I already know what those movies are, and I've kind of done that. I mean, if Antoine was going to do another Training Day, where it's to me, I don't know, just a way deeper story and way more interesting, I would be interested in that. But I don't know. It's a hard business. It's a weird business. And like I said, the things that I'm looking at doing, I'm really excited about, and hopefully they'll work out, and that would be great. Harry's brother, Rupert, I think is a fantastic composer, by the way. Oh. There's been a couple of times when I've watched something on the plane, and traveling, and I said, man, that was a really good score. I wonder who that was. And a couple of times, both times it was Rupert, and I thought, good for him, man. He's really good, and he's a really, really nice guy too. I haven't seen him in a long time.
Yes, I mean, I spoke to Rupert a couple of months ago when we did another interview, and he is all of the above. I mean, a nice guy, really nice, and a wonderful, wonderful composer. And
yeah, I'm a fan of it. People ask me all the time, which composers do you like? And my list isn't very long, but certainly Rupert's on there, and Alan, of course, and Tommy Newman. And I had a great time with Tom in New York when I was doing August Rush, and I was getting really, really frustrated. I had dinner with him, and he was really funny because he knew I was ready to explode, and he's been through that a million times. So we had a few scotches and a nice laugh. It was really a good break.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Thomas is also a very nice person.
Yeah. He sure is.
Absolutely, and I mean he's one of the greats, and I mean there are great composers out there, and we have had great composers and brilliant ones in the past. We have them now, but it's a different business, and oftentimes I think brilliant ideas are just shut down by producers and executives. And I mean, as I mentioned last time we spoke, you can write the best score in the world. If some executive feels, nah, that's wrong, I just want something simple, you can just scratch your tunes which you wrote. Yeah, I mean, that's
Well,
unfortunate.
you know that, and you know, and also I think it's generational because you know, when I was coming up, I met Jerry Goldsmith, and I could tell that his feeling was, oh yeah, you're one of these boom crash guys, you know. And he was right. I mean, you know, Jerry Goldsmith was genius. I mean, I wouldn't stand next to him and think I'm on the level that he's at. Um, but you know, I think it's difficult because I think that what we grew up in, really having to play instruments, really having to really play and be multifaceted in music, I think that you can get away with a lot less nowadays. I think with technology, I think, you know, if you're really good with technology, I think you can really get something going that people think, wow, that's really new and fresh, that's exciting. And then, you know, if that's successful, then they want all the scores to sound like that, you know. And
Yes.
it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, it's not any composer's fault. It's that when they sit down and they say, no, we want the score to sound like this. For me, that every time they've done that with me, for the most part, I hear it and I go, that's awful. I wouldn't write that kind of music. I mean, I can't, and I'm not going to write that kind of music. That's not what I want to do, you know? So that's why I think that I do fewer projects because I'm not interested in that, you know?
Yes.
I like someone who comes to me and goes, man, I'm a big fan of yours and I love your music and I'd love to collaborate. You know, that's the person I work with.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds very plausible. And of course, I mean, you are right. And but also it's also a fact that some artists, you know, be it a composer or a director, I think sometimes they have this chameleon adaptability, but for some reason they are not given a chance to prove that, because they say, well, you are known for this and this is exactly what we want, so we want a rehash of what you did before. And I think even composers, even back then and also now, they have been through that when they have been asked to just copy either their own music or the temp music, which
Yeah.
was the music of somebody else. So it happens to the best, even to the biggest names, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, like you said, there are times where they really get married to that temp and they're like, oh no, I want it to sound like that, you know, and that's death, you know. Um, Interestingly, this might interest you. So the original movie Speed was temped with all the music from Terminator.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, every time the bus was there, you heard the Terminator stuff, you know. So I remember looking at that and going, oh God, you know, you know, don't put Terminator up there because now I got to come up with something that's equally original that doesn't sound like Terminator, you know. Um, but it ended up good. But you know, it's kind of it's difficult if they use something that's really iconic. I remember they used on some of the Lion King stuff that I looked at early, they used the mission. And I'm going, come on, man, don't use the mission. I mean, you're putting the bar at the top of the sky, you know, and anything that I write is you're going to go, oh, it's not quite the mission, you know. Um, but we ended up with some really great themes, luckily, so it worked out. But um, yeah, it's the temp is a great thing, and it's all equally a difficult thing.
Yes, and the mission, of course, is a a very good score. And
Yeah, I mean, you can't really write much better than that. I mean, you know, honestly, unless you're Schubert, you know, or you know Beethoven. But yeah,
yes, let's see what will happen down the road, and which new aspiring composer will turn out to be a huge talent, and which one of the established composers will become even bigger and bigger. And
yeah, it's interesting to think about that because you know what the game used to be. was melody. And if you like John Williams and those people could write a great theme. They wrote a theme that you just couldn't get out of your head. And I was always in that place. That was what I felt was my strength. But the industry changed around 2002, 2003, and it was an anti-theme. We don't want a theme. We don't want something that, we don't want that kind of thing. We don't want that thing. One director told me, I won't say his name, but he said to me, "Don't do that awful John Williams thing." And I was just like, "What?" But the idea being more like wallpaper, just these sounds and this stuff and just cool stuff going on. Well, that's great. That's sound design. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I do. It's not what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So it kind of has changed, and it'll be interesting if it swings back to being, much more melodic and thematic. It'll be interesting because Zimmer made a career at that, and I made a career at that, and Silvestri made a career at that, and I thought his score to the last Marvel movie was really fantastic. I mean, I thought that was extremely good.
The Avengers.
Avengers, and not a lot of guys could pull that off. Honestly, not a lot of guys could do that.
It was a very good score, and
should have been recognized. I was really disappointed that it wasn't.
Yeah.
More.
Unfortunately, but that's also how the cookie crumbles sometimes. And but I love the what you said about John Williams. There is also a very big and famous producer who allegedly said, and I don't know if this is true or not, but he allegedly said, I don't want to hear this Jerry Goldsmith shit again. Do you believe?
There you go. What's interesting is that, so John's son, Joe Williams, who's the lead singer of Toto.
Yeah.
But little known fact, he did Matthew Broderick's voice in the songs in the original Lion King. So he was my Simba, because he could imitate what Matthew Broderick would sound like if Matthew could sing, and Matthew wasn't a real good singer at the time. So Joe did those vocals. And I got a chance to hang a lot with Joe, and Joe was doing TV stuff and, scoring, trying to score stuff. And he was telling me how he goes, my dad would sit at the piano panicked because he had to write a theme for Jaws and he had no idea what to do. And he would just sit there and try things and, and not sleep. And I thought, wow, that's hard to believe. You picture John Williams just going home and going, okay, give me a pencil and paper and I'll write the theme to Jaws. But, he sweat through it like everybody else. So that was kind of refreshing.
You mentioned before, and also last time we spoke, that he kind of tried to escape the action genre, escape for the lack of the better word. And I recently rewatched Return of the Paradise and also Mole Flanders, a period drama which is scored in 1996. Are those the kind of movies you are naturally attracted to?
I loved doing Return to Paradise. That was, and I think that's a really strong score, and I think it's a strong movie too. It was unfortunate that they had cast Anne Heche as the lead only because right before the movie came out, she announced that she was gay, which then made the relationship between her and Vince Vaughn so implausible for people to believe, right? So it was just bad timing. But going back and looking at that film and watching it, it's really strong. I mean, you got Joaquin Phoenix, and I just think it was. I love the director. I did several things with him, and I thought he did a great job on that movie, and I loved that score. Mall Flanders is also it's not a movie that I love, but I love the score. I love the theme. I just didn't have any budget, so I had to do most of it myself. I had a fiddle player. I had a friend of mine who played acoustic guitar, and I had somebody play woodwinds on it. I think it was Fred Selden, I think. But I just didn't have much of a budget, so I wish I could re-record it with a live orchestra, because I think it would be really strong.
Do you believe it's actually better if a director is knowledgeable about music, or do you find that distracting at times when they are...
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I I would rather have someone who trusts me and says I don't really know music, but I can react to something rather than someone who knows and plays music. Because that's just a little bit competitive at times or a little difficult because I don't think that they realize quite how difficult what I do is. Whereas somebody that doesn't really necessarily know music inside and out, realizes that I'm in a different world than he's in. So he doesn't think he can, just walk in there and go, oh, why don't you just do this?
You just mentioned there are composers which you really like and appreciate. Which composer would you like to collaborate with in the future, other than maybe Rupert Gregson-Williams?
Yeah, Rupert would be fun. Um, well,
Maybe
that would,
Harry, huh?
well, it would be a personality thing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? More than a musical thing. It would be somebody who I could get along with, and they like me, and I mean Harry and I get along fine. I mean, I think the difficulty with Harry and I is that we do similar things, so there wouldn't be like necessarily. I mean, it would be fun, but I don't know that he would need my help, and I don't know if I would need his help, right? Whereas if I worked with somebody really different than me, Alan would be very different than me as far as the way he works.
James Newton Howard, maybe?
I was just going to say James Newton Howard, and I really like James, and I love his work. Um, that would be fun to work with him. I think he's really interesting. I wish they would do more of that. I wish that they would. I wish that they would think in those terms and say, hey, would you guys like to co-score a movie? I mean, because they would. I mean, listen, when Hans does a movie, it's a co-score with about 17 guys. So I mean, why not? Why not? Why not just do it up front and say, hey, what if we got this guy, and how do you guys get along? Would you guys work together on a score? I think that would be really interesting. I mean, if Antoine said, hey, how about Mark and Harry write the music for this thing? It would be kind of fun. But I guess the problem would be financial because they'd have to pay us both and who gets to do the main title or the end credits or whatever, who gets there's always that kind of thing, I guess. But
Yes. Yeah, it would be nice to experience that, you teaming up with, another accomplished composer. I believe it's officially, and I'm talking about officially, it doesn't happen that often, two A-list guys teaming up officially to write a score. I mean, how huge was it when Hans and James Newton Howard collaborated on Batman Begins? I mean, it
yeah,
doesn't happen that often.
I mean they must have, because I know those guys' fees are very, very expensive, so they must have really paid them a lot of money, and been willing to pay that kind of money for both of them. But I thought it was really cool them working together. I liked what they did, and I don't know who did what, but I thought it was cool. Um, but as I say, I wouldn't say Hans because I've done it with Hans, and he's so friggin' busy that I probably would never see him. Um, so I'd rather do it with someone like I say, the Disney movies have all been collaborating like that. They haven't been two score composers, but me and Lynn working together was really great, and working with Phil Collins was fantastic. I mean, those guys are great innovators, but we don't do the same thing necessarily.
Mark, let's see what happens, and I also hope you will find a new director out there who can, challenge you a bit in a good way.
I think we're on the way to doing some of that stuff. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, great. Maybe Michael Bay will call you up again to do another.
I won't answer that call.
I have come across several horror stories about Mr. Bay, and I've been wondering if he's really that, bad, if he cusses and screams and yells all the time. I don't know. I've never met the man, but I've heard quite a few stories. Yeah.
Well, he told me, when I was working on Bad Boys 2, he told me that my music, that Marilyn Manson claims he can make people throw up with his music, and that I have the same ability.
Mm-hmm.
So, insults like that, you kind of go, well, why am I working with this guy? I mean, I made Bad Boys 1 great with the music for him. It was his first big movie, and you would think there'd be some respect, but no. there's so much money involved in him and what he does and everybody that works around him that it's a different kind of thing. And it's just not, I did it and I was there and I went through that in the 90s and I don't want to go back there.
Mark, I would like to thank you very much for taking so much time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate that. And I had a great time talking to you again, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I did very much. Thank you for doing it. And I'm sure, when we sign some things here, I'll let you know what they are.